The Scott Jennings Show is proudly sponsored by Lear Capital. Since 1997, Lear has helped Americans protect their retirement accounts and savings with physical gold and silver. With thousands of five-star reviews and $3 billion in transactions, Lear is who I trust to help me buy gold and silver. Visit LearScott.com.
The voice of free speech. The truth delivered. Common sense for the American people. Welcome to the Scott Jennings Show.
Could be a big week for Operation Epic Fury and the future of America's interest in Iran. We have the latest news and a deep dive with war expert John Spencer today. TSA agents received paychecks this morning thanks to President Trump. But what comes next on DHS funding? Congressman Randy Fine is here to discuss that. A Democratic Senate candidate is worried about offending people who were made sad by the Ayatollah's death. Well, we bring you the shocking audio. And actor Andy Serkis joins the show live today to promote his new animated movie, Animal Farm, which is an adaptation of the George Orwell classic. It is Monday, March 30th. This is Common Sense for the American people. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting for Salem today, and we are live in beautiful Louisville, Kentucky. One programming note, if you are part of the Roku ecosystem, the Salem News Channel is now available to you. Millions of people can now watch this show and all other Salem shows through Roku. You can also do it on Amazon Prime and Pluto TV and other streamers. But if you have Roku, download the Salem News Channel app today. Watch this show and our other Salem shows as you like. You can always find us on one of several hundred radio stations coast to coast that carry us, and always in podcast form on Apple and Spotify. Now to the news. A welcome sight for thousands of TSA agents this morning as backpay began showing up in their bank accounts today. That, plus the fact that ICE agents being deployed to airports clearly made things better and has eased up the pressure on America's air travel system. In fact, here's CNN's Ed Lavandera this morning at Houston's Bush Airport, one of the worst for long lines over the last couple of weeks. But this morning, well, take a listen to cut number 8.
I think passengers will be happy to hear it is a glorious looking scene. We were here all last week. All of this lobby of the Terminal E area was filled with people, and you can see how dramatically different it looks this morning. All the lines much shorter.
Now, since we left you on Friday, here's the latest on the DHS shutdown, which does continue, by the way. House Republicans voted Friday night to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security with immigration enforcement included after the Senate had left town after they passed a funding deal that did not include immigration funding. So the two chambers at present remain at an impasse. How are TSA agents getting paid today? Well, President Trump signed an executive order late last week declaring a national emergency and directing the government to pay them. So that is why the money is flowing to the agents today. They've gone without pay for over 40 days now. Of course, this has some Democrats quite angry, and the question is, are they planning to sue President Trump over paying the TSA workers? Well, you judge it. Here's Democratic Congressman Jim Himes of Connecticut in cut number 15.
Yeah, well, Margaret, the standoff is not done yet, right? The president is illegally paying, apparently, TSA agents. You had the Senate, as you pointed out with Mr. Homan, pass a bipartisan bill unanimously in the United States Senate to say, look, let's fund everybody else and let's deal with this thorny issue about ICE. And then you had the Republican House say, hell no, we're not doing that.
Himes called it illegal. He called paying TSA agents illegal. It would be an interesting tactic for Democrats to go to court here to claw back money from the agents, but hey, if you want to, go ahead. What happens next? Well, it's not really clear. Democrats are dug in, obviously, on their position that no money should go to immigration enforcement, and House Republicans remain committed to funding ICE and Customs and Border Patrol and whatever happens here. So we'll track it all this week for you. But for now, For now, it appears Donald Trump may have, at least temporarily, eased the pressure at America's airports while Democrats in Congress continue to play politics with enforcing our immigration laws. In other news, the parents of Sheridan Gorman are speaking out after laying their 18-year-old daughter to rest. Sheridan is the college freshman at Loyola Chicago who was murdered a couple of weeks ago by a Venezuelan national who was in the United States illegally. This poor family. Let's hear from mother Jessica Gorman at a vigil for her daughter this weekend in cut number 4.
And I want to say this gently, but honestly, as a mom, I'm angry. I'm completely heartbroken. And we are going to fight for justice for our sweet Sheridan. And we're going to fight for change. But we know not everyone will see it the same way we do. And not everyone will approach it the way we will. And that's okay. What matters is that we don't turn away from each other, that we actually listen, that we really try to understand, to stand in each other's shoes, even when they don't quite fit, even when it's uncomfortable, and even when it hurts. Because at the heart of all of this, we all want the same thing, for your children and for ours, to be safe, to be protected, and to come home. Because at the end of the day, that's what this is all about. All of our kids, every single one of them, protecting them, loving them, showing up for them. And that is how we honor her.
But of course, Democrats are taking this tragic opportunity to tell you that the real problem is attacks on immigrants. Now, this murder of Sheridan Gorman happened in Chicago, Illinois, where the mayor is named Brandon Johnson. Listen to him at one of the No Kings rallies this weekend in cut number 7.
Tell me why you wanted to come out, and what's your message for the community here?
Well, it's pretty straightforward. We have to end the assaults against working people. We have to end the assaults against immigrants.
Democrats in Chicago. First, they blamed Sheridan Gorman for her own death. They said that she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, that she startled this illegal alien who murdered her in cold blood. And now the mayor, Johnson, says, the real problem in all of this is attacks on immigrants. No, I think the real problem here, folks, is that American citizens like Sheridan Gorman are being murdered by people who should not be here. The difference between the two parties could not be starker here, folks. And this just into the Scott Jennings Show. We are told that President Trump today has spoken with the family of Sheridan Gorman. Tech news, Elon Musk is pushing back hard after a San Francisco jury verdict went against him, with his lawyer now alleging the entire process was tainted by bias. Now, this has to do with a lawsuit over Elon Musk's purchase of Twitter, which is now called X. Attorney Alex Spiro says jurors may have been more interested in mocking Elon Musk than in delivering justice, pointing to a bizarre detail in the damages form where one figure was written as 420 in bright blue ink while everything else was in black. Now, that number, of course, is a well-known cultural reference tied to Musk's past, and his legal team is arguing that it shows the jury was making a joke and not a serious legal determination. Now, Elon Musk's team is calling for a full review, possibly even a new trial, arguing the verdict reflects personal bias against Musk rather than the facts of the case. It is worth noting that the jury in this case rejected the most serious claims against Musk, but still found limited liability over certain statements tied to the Twitter deal. Now, Musk's team says that mixed result only reinforces their concern that this wasn't a clean, objective verdict, that in fact may have been a political message. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. This is Scott Jennings broadcasting today for Salem, and I would like to talk to you about a new sponsor of the Scott Jennings Show. It's called Chapter. Now, this is very important, and I want you to listen carefully because I now have some personal experience with this that I'd like to share. If you or someone that you love is on Medicare, you know that it is designed to be confusing. It is a mess of mailers and robocalls and half-truths, and I am partnering with Chapter because they actually cut through the noise. Now, my own parents just went through a consultation with Chapter, and the results speak for themselves. I did it with them. Let's talk about my mom. She is now on track to save $600 a year on her Plan G, exactly the same plan, but Chapter is somehow getting money back in her pocket. And for my dad, they acted as a true concierge. They helped him find a new doctor. Now, my dad just moved recently. He needed a new primary physician. Chapter went to work. They helped him find a doctor that's close to where he now lives. So Chapter always advocates for you, not the insurance companies. That's what was most compelling to me here. They have flipped this whole thing on its head. They don't get paid by recommending certain insurance companies. Chapter works for the customer, not the insurance companies. They're going to shoot you straight. They will tell you already if you've got the right plan for your needs, and they'll tell you if you don't, and then they'll help you make the switch. That's why I'm also going to send my in-laws over to Chapter Health. So don't gamble with your health care. I would recommend that if you're going through the Medicare process, connect with a Chapter advisor, dial pound 250 and say Medicare plan. It's a free call, there's no pressure, and you'll talk to a real person who actually knows their stuff. Chapter, I cannot recommend it highly enough. It was very easy, and it did work for us in the Jennings household. When we come back, the No Kings rallies featured a lot of commies and idiots. We'll have all that when we come back on the Scott Jennings Show. You know, gold and silver recently soared to record highs and then pulled back. So are precious metals still a good buy? Many Wall Street experts predict higher prices ahead. Why? Well, because we still have trillions in national debt, a declining dollar, and inflation that keeps shrinking our savings. Even with corrections along the way, gold remains a historical hedge for wealth protection. That's why Morgan Stanley's chief investment officer ditched the 60-40 stocks and bonds portfolio and is recommending up to 20% in precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call Lear Capital at 1-800-880-2424 for your free gold investment kit and learn how you could qualify for up to $20,000 in bonus gold. Lear Capital has over $3 billion in transactions and thousands of five-star reviews. Call 1-800-880-2424, 1-800-880-2424, or visit learscott.com.
Know how to drive a leftist crazy? Tell the truth and keep smiling. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It's Monday, March 30th. Scott Jennings here on Salem. By the way, if you are still contemplating coming on the big cruise in November, I highly encourage you to book your stateroom now. You can text the word cruise to 94878. Or if you go to scottjenningshow.com and click on the Gulf of America cruise banner, you can do it through that portal. Mike Gallagher will be there. Larry O'Connor will be there. I'm there. We're going to talk about the issues shaping America on this amazing ship, the Eurodam, a luxury ship. Book your cabin today. We're going to eat. We're going to swim. We're going to frolic in the sand. And we're going to talk about the future of America on the Gulf of America cruise, November 2026. I'm looking forward to this. It's going to be a long year. It's already been a long year. It's only the end of March. I feel like I need a vacation now, but I'm going to have to wait until November. But I want you there with me. Text the word cruise to 94878. All right, let's talk about the No Kings rallies this weekend. It's amazing to me, these No Kings people. They have all the free speech any one of us could ever desire, yet seem to labor under the delusion they live in a country with a king that is prohibiting them from speaking, although they're literally speaking all over the place. I was on television with a Democratic congressman on Sunday morning who told me that he went to 6 No Kings rallies in Northern Virginia. I thought 6 rallies, that's a lot of free speech in a country with a king that would not allow that. In fact, here's what I had to say about the No Kings rallies on CNN's State of the Union in cut number 6.
These No Kings rallies actually look pretty representative to me of the Democratic coalition. I saw people flying the hammer and sickle in New York City. I saw Hezbollah flags. I saw Hamas flags. I saw Palestinian flags. I saw trans signs. I see weirdo liberal boomers out there. this is pretty representative of the Democratic coalition, and that's who funds it as well, by the way. And so I think if America looks at this and says, what do the two parties stand for? They got it at the No Kings rally.
No, I think if you Americans were out there, you're out there, Republicans.
You like hammer and sickle? You like hammer and sickle flag?
That's not what that No King stood for.
They had a bunch of them. They come from somewhere.
All right, No Kings rally? I did. I went to 6, and I'll tell you, there's so much excitement. 6? There's so much energy. Yeah,
that's a lot of free speech.
I'll get you a T-shirt.
That's a lot of free speech for a country with a king.
That's a lot of free speech. And I'll tell you, there's so.
I mean, amazing. They're out here protesting kings and admitting they're having all the free speech. Of course, a lot of the people who went to the No Kings rallies had idiotic things to say. Here's a clip of a woman explaining to someone interviewing her why no African Americans were at the rallies. Let's listen to cut number 17.
It seems like there's a lack of diversity here today, that it's mostly people who look like you and I, and I just
It is not for black people, for people of color to get out on the street. They're at risk when they do that. If anybody's going to get arrested here, it's going to be a black person. It is not safe for them, and they don't need to participate. We need to walk in their name.
My favorite thing about these white liberal boomers is they have literally no idea how racist they sound, and yet they keep doing it over and over again. No one in their life ever stops and says, Grandma, please stop giving these interviews. Here is the MC at the No Kings rally in Minnesota, by the way, telling everyone to stop doing their own thing and to only follow the instructions of the leaders. Cut number 10.
You can check your ego about what you want to do and listen to the leadership, and when they tell you what they need done, you do that. And you pay enough attention to the amazing organizers who've been on the ground, who actually have the information, who've already done the work, instead of starting your own. Oftentimes you're like, who's doing it? It's like someone. You just need to learn who, and then you need to be the pack mule in the fight that they have been doing and organizing, because let me tell you what we need is pack mules, because there's brilliant minds and brilliant leaders in this community who oftentimes are putting up the folding chairs when they should be literally strategizing, because that's their strong suit. So be the folding chairs people, be the I'll bring donuts people for the brilliant minds who are actually making this train run.
Sounds like that they want the sheep to listen to a king at the No Kings rally. She literally called them pack mules. I mean, you honestly can't get more commie than what went on this weekend. Finally, here is the violent tendencies of the people going to these rallies. Cut number 16.
What does your sign say?
It says 8647, no king, no wars, no Trump.
Yes. And what do you mean by 8647?
Get rid of the 47th president. 86 and get rid of him.
Aha, that little laugh at the end. Haha, yes, let's do away with the president of the United States. Chuckle, chuckle. No Kings rallies, once again, shows the American people the craziness of the American left. When we come back, a deep dive on what's the latest with Iran and Operation Epic Fury. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Common sense for the American people. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Hey, it's Scott Jennings. You know, depending on where you live, crime may be skyrocketing, and you may already own a firearm. But before you face the financial, legal, and emotional weight of pulling the trigger, there's a smarter option. It's called Byrna. That's B-Y-R-N-A. Byrna makes a less lethal launcher that fires tear gas and kinetic rounds designed to stop an attacker for up to 40 minutes. That gives you time to escape and call for help without deadly consequences. Their best-selling compact launcher is sleek, slim, and incredibly powerful. It's about the size of a smartphone, and it is ideal for concealed carry. It's comfortable, discreet, and confidence-building. It fires at 400 feet per second with serious stopping power, enough to shut down a threat fast without the legal and moral complexity of lethal force. Byrna is proudly American. Over 80% of the components are U.S.-sourced. Every Byrna launcher is hand-assembled in Fort Wayne, Indiana. With over 750,000 of these things sold worldwide, Byrna is best in class. It's legal in all 50 states. No background checks, comes right to your door. Learn more at Byrna.com, BYRNA.com.
Quelling leftist arguments with truth and common sense. They hate that. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, March 30th. Common sense for the American people on the air for another week. Scott Jennings is here on Salem. And I want to start this segment. We're going to talk about Iran and the latest on Operation Epic Fury. But I got to start with the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who appeared on ABC News on Sunday morning. Brilliant Marco, once again, telling it like it is in cut number 2.
This operation, okay, and that's what this is, it's about very specific objectives. The president laid them out on the first night of the operation. I'll repeat them to you now because I hear a lot of talk about we don't know what the clear objectives are. Here they are. You should write them down. Number 1, the destruction of their Air Force. Number 2, the destruction of their Navy. Number 3, the severe diminishing of their missile launching capability. And number 4, the destruction of their factories so they can't make more missiles and more drones to threaten us in the future. All of this so that they can never hide behind it to acquire a nuclear weapon. That was our objective from the beginning. That remains our objective now. We are on pace and, in fact, ahead of schedule on some of those things, and we are going to achieve those things in a number of weeks, not in a number of months.
Sounds pretty clear to me, and here to discuss all of this and the latest in Operation Epic Fury and is John Spencer, who is a retired Army officer and urban warfare expert. John Spencer is the chair of the War Studies at Madison Policy Forum, and he also has a book coming out in August, which I want to hear about today. Great title, 20 Times I Almost Died. It sounds like, John, first of all, welcome to the Scott Jennings Show. This is a hard-won title for a book to say 20 Times I Almost Died. This makes me want to read it right now. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Scott, and I love this in your copy. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this is going to be a great conversation, and we look forward to getting your book later in the summer and telling our listeners about it. Let's talk about Iran, though. You heard Marco Rubio there lay out the clear objectives the United States has. In your opinion, as an expert on warfare, are we meeting those objectives? Is he right? Are we ahead of schedule? Kind of give us your military assessment of Operation Epic Fury so far.
Sure, and thanks, Scott. And I think it's almost like we have to – I don't do politics. I try to do objective analysis and global war studies specifically. And despite how many times people for political reasons have said that the objectives are this or that, whether it was the president's speech, the opening hour, or every speech since then, the objectives have been very clear. I believe on what we know, and I actually come with a strong appreciation of what we don't know. But by every measure we can see, the United States and Israel are beyond what anybody could have predicted in the achievement of those goals and destroying the missile and drone supply manufacturing capability, the Air Force's capabilities to even get off the ground, the Navy and all of its pieces and parts, the nuclear program, and ultimately to achieve the overall goals to make the United States and the region a safer place. I think we can talk about each individual metric, whether that's how many missiles they can get off from 300 on day one to in the tens now to whoever we're negotiating with at the moment. And I think it's really important to continue to say that the president, the Secretary of War, the Chief of Staff, or the Joint Chief of Staff, General Kane, this is not a regime change war. This is a regime behavior change. And if you kill enough of the old regime to where the new regime agrees to the terms that we've set that the entire world should be happy about, then you have a change in the behavior. But everybody just wants to impose their own metrics, their own objectives. And Secretary Rubio was reiterating again, here are the metrics. And by every measurable factor, we're way ahead on achieving those goals.
Well, sadly, I think there's a lot of people out there who are cheering for, hoping for, wishing for bad outcomes for the American military so they can then say, oh, I told you President Trump is terrible. That's how infected politics is right now in the United States of America, where people are wish casting bad outcomes when we're involved in a military engagement. But you raised an issue that I want to get into, and that's regime behavior change. Now, the president and the White House say that they are negotiating with the Iranians and what they call promising new people. And it's not quite clear who that is. There's been some speculation about that. You wrote a piece in the New York Post recently about the nature of a conflict like this, taking out the leadership of the regime first and leaving behind some other people for us to talk to. And again, I think it's important to always note, we don't have access to the latest intelligence. We're not in the Situation Room. We don't know exactly what the president knows, other than I know he knows more than we do right now. But given all of your work around this idea of striking the leadership and hearing the president say we're talking to people who might be a little bit more pliable, give us your reaction to all that news today.
Yeah, and I think the president just spoke saying that who he's talking to for now. In that article, I made the strong, historically backed statement that we've never had this capability. So it actually challenges some of the military theory that we all use from Sun Tzu till now. This wasn't a decapitation strike. In the opening hours, the United States and Israel eliminated the entire political leadership as well as the military leadership. Name the conflict, like World War II is an example I gave of eliminating Hitler, his successor, all his field marshals, Rommel, all of them, and then 40 other individuals in the opening day. And I don't care what people try to say, that changes the will of the enemy to continue the behavior they had before that happened. You have new people whose number one goal is survival, right? So this is all about people trying to assess the world and the war achieve this or that. I mean, war is an act of force or the threat of force, which we will probably talk about is what is the United States or President Trump threatening, but it's the use of force or the threat of use of force to achieve your will on the enemy, to get him to do what you want. And in this case is stop making a nuclear bomb to destroy first Israel, then the United States, as you say, longer ranging missiles, the proxy terrorism, the use of the Strait of Hormuz as an economic weapon against the world. So it wasn't a decapitation strike, but the continued elimination beyond the first day of every individual until the president gets somebody who's willing to come to the table. And I know they have a talk potentially in Islamabad very soon saying, and it's almost like people are magicians. Like they take the data points they want and say, don't look over here. Don't look at what what the president says, that he is talking to somebody. They are open to giving us oil tankers and agreeing to the terms. This is the really question somebody who talks with certainties about what's going on. Of course, we can track some things, but like you said, I bet we don't even know who's truly in charge. There's lots of reports of defectors. There's reports of the president arguing with the new person talking for the IRGC. There's so much that is clouded in this fog, right? But we have these podcasters that think they can see right through that fog.
Well, it's obvious there's some fracture going on inside what's left of the regime, and you might have differences of opinion among the people who are left. And so it does make sort of the state of negotiations interesting, because you might cut a deal with somebody or some bodies, and then another group comes along and says, we don't like that deal, so we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. That voice you're hearing today, by the way, is John W. Spencer, chair of war studies at the Madison Policy Forum and author of the upcoming book, 20 Times I Almost Died. John, we got a couple minutes left. I want to talk to you about the Karg Island issue. This is where the Iranians have their oil infrastructure. Trump has talked about seizing Karg Island and seizing Iranian oil. What do you think he is up to by making that desire public? Is this part of the negotiation tactic here, or do you think it's serious that we might actually seize Karg Island and therefore seize a considerable part of the Iranian oil industry?
Yeah, so I wrote this article over the weekend on my X about all the different options the United States has. And if anybody's observing the war and thinks that Iran has some type of upper hand, they're just not even being practicable about what the possibilities the United States has. And President Trump has mentioned many of them: Karg Island, some of the interior islands in the Strait, seizing the oil just straight out as it comes out of the Strait, cutting the power stations. I mean, Karg Island, because it is this center of gravity for the economic vitality of the current regime, right? This is, again, people say this is all tactical brilliance, but no strategy. The strategy is to force this regime, whoever is still alive, to do what we want. And yes, if you seize, isolate, destroy Karg Island, you take its economic vitality of survival. And this is where everybody talks about Iran like it's this strong empire that, it could survive anything. Then they forget what happened in January of 2026, where the regime almost fell from its own economic decisions and spending billions of dollars. I mean, it sent $1 billion to what's left of Hezbollah last year, Scott. So yes, if Karg Island was seized, that it doesn't have to be seized. It could be isolated. It could be destroyed. There are so many options for the United States right now. And yes, there are boots in the region that could do that mission if assigned it. This is the other ideal that people think is too difficult for the U.S. military. If you're going to underestimate Israel, that's one thing. But don't underestimate what the U.S. military can do.
Final question. I've got 30 seconds here. Is it going to require boots on the ground, U.S. troops on the ground inside of Iran, to fully seize and eliminate all enriched uranium so that we have full confidence that this regime, whatever's left of it, cannot make a nuclear weapon?
Definitely, you'll never get me talking in certainties saying that this is required. Of course, that is an option that the president can use as a real legitimate threat. Another thing that could happen is the regime could see through that it's on its last dying breath. If it keeps it up, it won't survive, and it needs to hand it over. There are many options there. I also am not, boots on the ground has become some type of taboo word. A belief that a single boot touches Iranian soil becomes, 100,000 American troops staying to build a democracy. All of this, I rail against that. Of course, you want to achieve the goals with the most amount of dilemmas for the current people, whoever's in charge. It doesn't require the destruction of a 1 million-man army. It doesn't require, tens of thousands of special forces going in and securing it by force. But you never want to tell your enemy what you're willing to do or not do. And that's the worst strategy you could ever have.
All right, John Spencer, before we go, the book is called 20 Times I Almost Died. It's publishing in August. Can folks pre-order it now?
Absolutely. You can go to Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, anywhere, and pre-order it now. Stories from the Gaza tunnels to you name the place that I do my research and let alone my own military experiences.
We look forward to reading that. John W. Spencer, will have you back as the situation in Iran and Operation Epic Fury continues. We are going to take a break. When we come back, it looks like the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, has been at the podium for a few minutes. We may have a couple of cuts from Caroline. We'll see what she has to say today. You're listening to Common Sense for the American People. I'm Scott Jennings, broadcasting on Salem. Stay with us.
If the leftists haven't had enough yet, there's more. This is the Scott Jennings Show. Freedom to speak clearly with no leftist lunacy. This is the Scott Jennings Show.
Monday, March 30th, Common Sense for the American People. We have the latest from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. She is at the podium now. We'll play it in just a moment. First, a message that every parent and grandparent needs to hear. It's about your kids. They're being targeted online. They're being groomed online by adults who get into these apps. They get into these games. They get into social media. They prey on your children. And our friends at Child Help are trying to stop them and keep the kids safe. That's the bottom line. One boy, in fact, reached out through Child Help's chat hotline. He was terrified and he was ashamed. He met an adult in an online game, and the grooming started, and that adult began demanding photos of the child and threatening to lie to his parents if he didn't comply. Now, put yourself in the shoes of that kid. Young kid, online, playing a game. All of a sudden, he's being threatened by an adult for photos. Very scary. That kid got in touch with Child Help. Child Help saved his life. They interceded, and they realized what was going on, and their trained counselors took control. It costs $27 for a child to contact Child Help. That's what it costs Child Help to provide the service. The service is, of course, free to the victims. But if you could donate $27 and make one of those calls, or chats possible to save a life, wouldn't you do it? You can do it by texting the word child help to 94878 or going to childhelp.org/Scott. I know these people. I trust these people. I've been to their headquarters. I've seen the operation. Child Help is trying to eliminate the scourge of these adults grooming kids, the scourge of child abuse, and we should get behind their mission. Also, a quick note for those of you who are listening in the Cleveland area or Ohio, if you're planning to go to opening day in Cleveland, which is, I believe, this Friday, April the 3rd, we at Salem are partnering with Indian Motorcycle, which is an iconic American brand, to host a VIP tailgate near the stadium. If you show up in your Cleveland Indians gear, not Guardians, Indians, you got to be wearing Indians, vintage Indians gear, you'll be entered into a contest to win a spot in our Gulf of America cruise. That's coming up in Cleveland on Friday, April the 3rd, opening day for Cleveland. All right, Caroline Leavitt is at the podium, and she's been talking a little bit about what's going on in Iran. Let's start here. President Trump says he's been doing some negotiating. With who? Let's listen to Caroline Leavitt, cut number 18.
It's no surprise that we are seeing the remaining elements of the regime become increasingly eager to end the destruction and come to the negotiating table while they still can. Despite all of the public posturing you hear from the regime and false reporting, talks are continuing and going well. What is said publicly is, of course, much different than what's being communicated to us privately. As a result, President Trump issued a 10-day pause to postpone planned strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. This remains a truly once-in-a-generation opportunity for the regime to make a good deal with the United States, permanently abandon their nuclear ambitions, and stop acting as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. If the Iranians reject this golden opportunity, the greatest military in the history of the world continues to stand by to provide President Trump with every option available to ensure this regime continues to pay a grave price. One way or another, Iran will no longer have the credible ability to threaten the United States or our allies, which is, of course, the overall objective and mission the president set out when he launched Operation Epic Fury.
One more thing from Caroline here about the strength of our operations and successes. Let's listen to cut 19.
Our military continues to obliterate Iran's defense industrial base, with nearly 70% of their missile, drone, and naval production facilities and shipyards damaged or destroyed thus far, significantly reducing their ability to pose future threats in the region. U.S. and Israeli joint forces control the skies and have asserted air dominance over Iran, completing more than 11,000 successful combat flights thus far. The trend remains clear. The United States is conducting more intense, targeted strikes with devastating combat power with each passing day to destroy the threat posed by the Iranian terrorist regime, as President Trump sought out to do a month ago.
Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, at the podium. We're monitoring her remarks today, but it's obvious the United States government is talking to someone in Iran about winding down this conflict and figuring out what comes next. We're going to take a break. When we come back, more breaking news. It's Scott Jennings, Common Sense for the American People. Stay with us. Coming up in just a moment, Congressman Randy Fine joins us to discuss the latest in Washington, including what's going on with the shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, which is still going on. First, a little bit of breaking news. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt at the podium today, and she's going back and forth with the press about the president negotiating with Iran right now in a way to end the hostilities and get a regime in place over there that is not openly trying to destroy the United States of America. Here's the brilliant Caroline Leavitt in cut 23.
You addressed this a little bit in the opening, but just to follow up, because Americans are sort of seeing these conflicting messages between the United States and Iran. I know the president insists that negotiations are underway. As you just mentioned, he's also said that Iran has agreed to most of the 15 points. We just heard from Iran again. They're saying no negotiations are taking place. They're calling the proposal excessive, unrealistic. So how do you square that? How do you explain that discrepancy between the two?
I think the American people are smart enough not to take the word of a terrorist regime that has chanted death to America for 47 years at their word. And I hope the journalists in this room are wise enough not to take an Iranian regime that has repeatedly lied about our country, about our values, about everyone in this room, frankly, for nearly 5 decades.
Towel snap from Caroline Levitt right there. A couple of other notes. House Democrats are under fire after an ethics bombshell. A bipartisan ethics panel found last week that Democrat Sheila Sherfilis McCormick is guilty of more than 24 ethics violations, including money laundering. $5 million went from the taxpayers into her campaign account. What's going to happen next? Will she be expelled? Well, the problem is Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, is declining to break with her, and he is saying he's going to wait and see what happens. I'm not sure what else he needs to see. And this just into the show, Pam Bondi announced just a little while ago that the Justice Department is suing the state of Minnesota for allowing boys to play in girls' sports and use girls' locker rooms. The Minnesota Department of Education receives more than $3 billion in federal funding from the U.S. government each year. And as a condition to receiving this federal funding, they had agreed to comply and ensure its funding subrecipients, including local schools, complied with Title IX. And yet, they're still letting boys play in girls' sports and putting boys in girls' locker rooms. So, incoming action from the Trump Justice Department. Joining us now to discuss all of this and more from Florida, Congressman Randy Fine is here. Congressman Fine, thanks for being with us. Still a lot of breaking news going on. Let me start with the ongoing shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, which I guess is now the longest government shutdown in history. The House Republicans voted late Friday night to fund all of it, including immigration enforcement. The Democrats in the Senate would rather not do that. How long is this going to go? Congressman Fine.
Thanks for having me, Scott. The answer is I don't know. What Democrats have made clear is they are putting the interests of illegal immigrants over the interests of Americans. That's what this is about. They do not want to deport anyone. Not a single one of the 20 million people that Joe Biden let in over the last 4 years. And so they don't care what happens to the American electorate as long as those people can stay. On Friday, we passed a bill that says reopen everything. And by the way, you want to know one of the things that Democrats want to keep closed? It's the group of investigators that investigate child sex trafficking when they came across the border. Over 300,000 unaccompanied minors that got lost. So they claim to care about things like the Epstein files, but when it comes time to investigate child sex trafficking, they don't seem to care. I hope we get it resolved. I hope the Senate passes our bill and gets the government reopened, and I'll do anything I have to do to make that happen.
And right now, Congressman Fine, just so we understand, both the Senate and the House are on Easter recess, and that's supposed to be for 2 weeks. Are there any discussions going on about bringing Congress back to Washington to continue to work here, or are we going to let this 2 weeks play out?
Well, I've called on the Senate to go back to work to pass our bill. And interestingly, in that press conference you just played a clip of, Caroline Levitt says the president says we can't stay gone for 2 weeks. So I am back in Florida. I flew home on Saturday, but with 4 hours notice, that's how long it takes me to get from my house to my office in Washington, and I will be there. But we've put the plan on the table. Open the government, pay the employees. The Senate just needs to be willing to do that. And Senate Democrats need to stop demanding that we not pay federal employees.
Yeah, let's hear from Caroline Levitt, actually. She said this moments ago, cut 21.
Nothing will be truly normal again until Democrats do the right thing to fund this agency fully. Again, the president has stepped in the meantime to do what's right to end this crisis that we've had at air travel and at airports across the country in the meantime. But again, Congress needs to come back. Democrats need to fund the Department of Homeland Security so we can formally and fully get these great employees paid long into the future.
By the way, she raised the issue of pay. I know TSA agents received some back pay today. That was because Trump declared an emergency and ordered the Department of Homeland Security to pay them. That's not a long-term solution, and TSA has lost, I think, more than 500 agents throughout this shutdown. Is this not motivating to some of your Democratic colleagues? Are they interested in just keeping people working forever and ever without paychecks and some sort of indentured servitude? I mean, the attitude here towards working class people who make $50,000 a year is pretty horrible, is it not?
It is, and I think you have to understand the issue. They don't want Customs and Border Patrol, and they don't want ICE. They want those departments to go away, which is why they won't vote to fund them. They've made very clear they don't care about American citizens. Their priorities are Somali pirates, Muslim terrorists, and illegal immigrants. And so they want these people to never come back to work. They want the government to be permanently shut down. And the American people need to rise up and say, no, we care about having a border. We care about illegal immigrants going home. Fund the government. Don't make regular federal employees suffer because of your agenda. And the last thing I would say is this. Every single Democratic senator and congressman is getting their salaries while regular Americans who work for these agencies are not. It's repulsive. It's why I had to send a letter myself to say, don't pay me. I'm not getting paid if government workers aren't getting paid. Every senator, every congressman should be doing the same.
Congressman Randy Fine from Florida is our special guest. Congressman, one of your fellow Florida delegation members, Representative McCormick, she's a Democrat, was found guilty on 25 counts by the House Ethics Committee last week, all revolving around this issue where she effectively stole $5 million of federal COVID relief money and laundered it into her own congressional campaign. Now, she's under indictment and will face federal court next month. But right now, she is still a member of Congress. It doesn't sound like the Democrat leadership wants to deal with this. When the House comes back, do you believe one of the first things that you will do is vote to expel McCormick from the House of Representatives?
Well, I certainly hope so. Look, under the George Santos standard, he was the last member expelled. And under the standard that was used there, she clearly merits being expelled. I mean, so there's no question the level of investigation, the level of fact-finding is far beyond what led Democrats to demand that George Santos be expelled. So they've laid out the standard a few years ago. I wasn't in Congress then, but using that standard, she clearly should be gone. She stole $5 million of money from FEMA, the agency that helps people after hurricanes. It's repulsive, it's repugnant, and we'll see. Do Democrats care about power so much that they'll keep someone who stole emergency management funding in Congress? That's what we'll find out in the next week.
Yeah, this story is wild. $5 million. This is one of the most brazen examples of political corruption we have seen in recent years. The Democrats are pretty silent on it. The media has been silent on it. They don't really want people to know about this, but $5 million went from the Treasury that was meant for regular people, and it went right into a congressional campaign. Pretty wild. Congressman Randy Fine of Florida, look forward to seeing you back here in the near future. Always appreciate your insights. I do have a message from our friends at the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. As we've been discussing, Operation Epic Fury rages on. The sirens are still going off in Israel. Look, I've been there when this happens. When the sirens go off, you've got about 15 seconds to get into a bomb shelter. These shelters, they're often several floors down, and it's hard for people, elderly, sick people, to get down in there, and they may be down there for a very long time. This is where the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews comes in. They have large-scale distributions of life-saving food and first aid and emergency essentials that go into these shelters, that go into the emergency rooms. Their work is more critical now than ever before. We're asking Christians and Jews around the world to pray for the protection of Israel. Stand with Israel in prayer. Go to supportifcj.org, supportifcj.org, and stand with Israel today. When we come back, we'll tell you about the priorities of the Chicago public school system, and no, they are not to teach our kids anything useful. More on that when we come back. It's Scott Jennings on Salem. Stay with us.
Ready for some common sense and a little Kentucky windage? Here's Scott Jennings.
Well, you'll get common sense from me, but you're not going to get any from the teachers' unions, particularly the ones in Chicago, Illinois. They are getting crazier and crazier with every passing story we bring you. Today, joining us is Kamden Mulder from the National Review. She's got some reporting on the 19th annual Teachers for Social Justice curriculum meeting. Kamden, welcome into the Scott Jennings Show. Looking through your story, my advice to people with kids in the Chicago public schools is, yikes, you may want to look elsewhere. What did you find out about this Teachers for Social Justice curriculum meeting? It's pretty wild.
Hi, Scott. Thank you so much for having me today. I agree. It is completely wild. Essentially, earlier this month, Chicago Public Schools and various other radical teacher groups joined together to host their 19th annual curriculum fair. And teachers were able to attend this fair to earn professional development hours. And it, if it was being done in good practice, would teach them how to better, teach their classes and their lessons and things like that. But in reality, it was just a factory for radical left-wing indoctrination of our students, specifically in Chicago.
So what is it that they're telling the teachers that they should focus on in the classroom? I mean, I would think the teachers should be told, maybe focus on phonics or how to add and subtract or things of that nature. But what are the teachers actually being told to teach the students? What is the focus that the union would like them to have?
Yeah, Scott. So the main focus is essentially the union believes that we're in a crisis right now, particularly because of President Trump and what his administration is doing. So they suggested, various lesson plans such as, does my curriculum teach genocide, or dropping the Anti-Defamation League from schools. And for those that aren't familiar, it's a group that helps teach about anti-Semitism and bigotry, because they believe that the Anti-Defamation League's definition of anti-Semitism is unfair, and that it is, too critical of those who don't necessarily agree with Israel or the United States relationship with Israel. And so teachers were able to go to this curriculum fair and learn about all of these different things, just to basically teach their students that America is a horrible place to live in and that we were founded on horrible values and a horrible history.
Yeah, that is the mission right now, it seems to me, of the teachers' unions, not just in Chicago, but across the country, to indoctrinate the next generation that they live in a country that's rotten at its core, that core must be ripped out, and that all of Western civilization must be done away with. I'm old-fashioned. I want reading, writing, and arithmetic in my schools, but they have a different idea. The keynote speaker at this conference was a person named Dima Khalidi. How radical is this individual? And this is the person sitting up there telling the teachers what to do. Dima Khalidi, tell us about this person.
Yes, so she is the executive director of Palestine Legal, which is a legal group that works with trying to defend, Palestine and the various issues going on over there, but also particularly students and their activism on campus. So we've seen radical activism on college campuses across the country, and Palestine Legal, attempts to defend a lot of that activism that we've seen has, ended up violent and just very destructive. So she essentially, believes that, once again, what the Trump administration is doing, whether it's at Harvard or other, various big universities, placing those, withholding the federal funding, she's just wildly against that. And so just another really concerning person to have speak at this curriculum fair, because it's just further sending down these beliefs and these values, not only on college campuses, but to K through 12 education.
Kamden Mulder from National Review is our guest, talking about the crazy teachers unions in Chicago. Kamden, I'm always fascinated when someone like you is able to get access to a meeting like this. That means you're a good journalist. How did you do it? Did they just post the Zoom link online, or they leave the door open? How did you get into this crazy meeting? Because I can't imagine they wanted you there.
Yeah, Scott, that's a great question. it's really great that there are, so many people and so many organizations that are on our side of this issue and are willing to help root out all of this indoctrination and just radical beliefs. And so some of it is just as easy as knowing where to look. You can go online and you can find, these things posted on their websites, and you can see some of the curriculum on there. Others is people send in tips, which is also very helpful. But it's great that, people trust National Review to help expose these issues and try to bring light to the fact that there is a lot of radicalization going on in schools.
Crazy stuff. That is intrepid reporter Kamden Mulder from the National Review. Kamden's got a new story in National Review about this crazy teachers union meeting in Chicago where they are, well, let me just tell you, they're not worried about phonics up there. They're worried about everything else. But Kamden will have you back. We look forward to your future reporting. You're obviously a good one. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, bona fide Hollywood celebrity Andy Serkis is here. He's got a new project. You're going to want to hear about it on the Scott Jennings Show after this.
Saving Western civilization, one busted leftist narrative at a time. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
It is Monday, March 30th. Common sense for the American people. Scott Jennings is here on Salem. Okay, this weekend is the Cleveland Guardians. That's the current name of the team. That is their opening weekend here in Cleveland, if you're listening in that area. I do know we're on the air in Cleveland, and Salem is partnering with Indian Motorcycle. If you're in this area and you're planning to go to the Cleveland home opener on Friday, April the 3rd, Salem and Indian Motorcycle are setting up a VIP tailgate just for you. And it's going to be, I think we're broadcasting, not we, and that I'm not, but the folks up in Cleveland are going to be broadcasting live from Jolene's Honky Tonk also in the afternoon up there. Here's the point. If you're going to this, show up in your Cleveland Indians gear, not the Guardians. Show up in your Indians gear, and you'll be entered into a contest to win a free spot in our Gulf of America cruise that's coming up in November. And so we're partnering with Indian Motorcycle on that. We appreciate their partnership and sponsorship of the show and of Salem. So we're doing that on Friday in Cleveland. Other news this hour, as I mentioned earlier, Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, was at the podium for quite some time, briefing today. And we had a little back, and as you know, the Department of Homeland Security remains shut down. And so she got asked about that. Let's take a little bit of a listen here to cut number 20, Karoline Leavitt.
For you. Thank you. There are some concerns the administration is starting to change its position on deportations, border enforcement, possibly asylum policies. What would you say to Americans that are somewhat concerned that the shift has happened?
Sure. Well, while there has, of course, been a change in leadership at the Department of Homeland Security with former Senator, now Secretary Mullen, joining the president's cabinet, I can assure the American people there has not been a change in policy. It has always been the policy of this president and this administration to deport the worst of the worst illegal alien criminals from our communities. That's something I know Secretary Mullen remains wholeheartedly committed to doing. And it's something that is overwhelmingly popular with the American people. And it's something that is necessary to protect our homeland and to prevent deaths of Americans in our country.
Karoline Leavitt at the podium today. She also made some comments about this tragic Sheridan Gorman story. Now, we've been talking about it on this show. Sheridan Gorman, the 18-year-old college freshman in Chicago who was murdered by a Venezuelan national who was in the country illegally. We played earlier in the show some comments from Sheridan Gorman's mother, who made just an emotional speech at a vigil for young Miss Gorman. But Karoline Leavitt had some harsh words for the press and their coverage, or I suppose lack of coverage, of this terrible story. Let's hear Karoline again in cut number 22.
Attention, this is the media coverage of the case of Sheridan Gorman. You have ABC News has spent 1 minute and 19 seconds between 2 days when this case was first alerted. You have CBS 2 minutes and 1 second. You have NBC 23 seconds spent on the life of a young, beautiful American woman whose life was taken short by an illegal alien who should have never been here in the first place. When we are in the wants to defund the agency that is responsible for protecting Americans, I think her life was worth more than 23 seconds on cable television. And I think the people in this room have a responsibility to report on cases like this, because it just exemplifies why the president believes so strongly in deporting illegal aliens.
Here's a sad fact. The reason that they're not covering the death of Sheridan Gorman is because it cuts against the narrative. I mean, the narrative of the media and the Democrats is that all immigration, legal and illegal, is inherently good. They want you to believe that open borders, so anyone, literally anyone, can walk across here, is a good thing. They want you to believe that every immigrant who comes here, legal or illegal, is a net benefit to our country, is a net benefit to our economy, causes no trouble, causes no harm. That's what they want you to believe. So when a story like the Sheridan Gorman murder happens, the information must be suppressed. We have to ignore that because it cuts against the narrative. This happens all the time. The narratives are formed, and then we have to suppress or ignore any news to the contrary. Same thing happens when it comes to voting. All the time we are assured, oh, there is no irregular voting. There is no attempt to throw elections through breaking voting laws and election laws. There are no illegal immigrants who are registered to vote, let alone voting in the United States of America. We're told this all the time. It becomes part of the fabric of just the idle chit-chat, doesn't it? You turn on cable news, you turn on broadcast news, and people just flippantly say, oh, this never happens. This never happens. Oh, you know, American citizens commit crimes and murders far more than illegal immigrants. That never happens. There is no illegal immigrant crime. There is no illegal registered to vote anywhere. Nobody that's illegal has ever tried to vote in an American election. All of these things become part of the fabric of the idle chit-chat. It's part of the narrative. That's what they want, the narrative. The accepted, we just accept it. It's just part of our political rhetoric in this country. Then things happen. There have been numerous stories, lots of stories in lots of states, of not only illegal immigrants registering to vote or being registered to vote, but in fact voting in U.S. elections. It's happening. Of course, the pivot is always, well, but it's not happening in enough of a volume to make a difference. Well, that's acceptance, isn't it? If you say, well, some is okay because it's probably not going to change the outcome of an election. Some of it's okay. You're opening the door for more of it. And what you're really opening the door for is not only is it okay, but it should be accepted. Because we've accepted these illegal immigrants into our country. We've accepted them into our workplaces. We've accepted them into our society. So why shouldn't we accept them in to our voting booths? The same thing will happen, is happening on crime. Well, it's a small price to pay. Few criminals get in, a few murderers, few rapists, few things happen. Small price to pay for all the good that illegal immigration does for the United States of America. Look, it's not that many. See, it's just every now and again it happens. Isn't it a small price to pay? I mean, that is the progression. And don't believe me, just look at the Democrats' own policies. You look at their policies. No immigration enforcement. No money for immigration enforcement. Under Biden, they preferred the border open, so it was open. Under Trump, they prefer to try to defund immigration enforcement so that nobody who came here can be deported. Don't take it from me. Don't take it from a Republican politician. Look at what they do. Look at what they say. This weekend at the No Kings rally in Chicago, the mayor there, Brandon Johnson, was he up there talking about Sheridan Gorman? No. He was up there saying, boy, you know what's terrible? All these attacks on immigrants. They're worried more about rhetoric about illegal immigration and the federal government enforcing our laws than they are about someone like Sheridan Gorman being murdered. The initial reaction from a Chicago alderwoman about Sheridan Gorman, well, you know, she was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And, you know, probably she went out for a walk and she startled this poor Venezuelan national, startled him. That's what caused it. No, I'll tell you who was here in the wrong place at the wrong time. It was Jose Medina. He's in the wrong place because he's in our country illegally. And it was the wrong time for him because he was in a place he shouldn't have been with a gun he shouldn't have had, opening fire on American citizens who darn well ought to be able to go anywhere they please because it's their country. Sheridan Gorman is an American. It's her country. She was out with her friends. It's their country. Wrong place? Wrong time? Really unbelievable stuff coming from the Democrats right now. Gavin Newsom's wife, I have a feeling we're going to be saying this a lot, by the way. Gavin Newsom's wife is back in the news. Some recently surfaced audio from our friends on the internet. She said they recently took a trip to red states in the South so they could teach their kids about racism and sexism and bullying, because, you know, that doesn't happen in blue states. It only happens in red states in the South. Let's listen to Gavin's wife. Cut 14, please.
Yeah, well, Mark, you took your 4 kids on this trip. You're here in Alabama now. Why was it important to you to take them on this trip to red states and learn about the history in our country?
That's a great question. Well, I don't think, or I know for a fact that we don't get all of this history in our schools, and it's part of, enlivening them, building their curiosity, expanding their hearts, their empathy, so that they themselves can be the change they wish to see in the world and recognize that, we have work to do and that we have healing to do. And so that they can be, use their voices to stand up and speak out when they see pain and suffering and bullying and racism and misogyny around them. And
you want them to see it so that they know.
I do. I'm a truth seeker. They need to know the truth.
This lady, Jennifer Siebel Newsom, is going to be a real problem for poor old Gavin. I'm telling you right now. We've now featured her comments a couple of times on the show. And the condescension towards everyone else in America is so thick. The idea, we need to take our kids to Alabama. It's the only way they'll ever learn about racism. I mean, these people, they have no, and the thing is, they have no idea how they sound. There's no self-awareness. Absolutely nothing. My advice for Jennifer Newsom and Gavin and the rest of these Democrats is look inwards to these blue states where illegal immigrants are murdering American citizens because of your open border policies. Quick word from our friends at Patriot Mobile. Now, every day you are making choices that help shape our country's future, right down to which cell phone provider that you choose to support. Here's what I want you to know about Patriot Mobile, who, by the way, I know the guys that own it. I've been with them. I've learned all about this company. I am a believer in Patriot Mobile. They are not just a wireless provider. They are an activist organization that is funded by selling top-tier cell phone service. So you get great service, as good or better than what you're getting now, and you get a company that then turns that funding into into support for the conservative Christian cause. It's really ingenious what they're doing. My advice is to join them. Join me. Go to patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. Use promo code Scott. They'll give you a free month. patriotmobile.com/Scott or call 972-PATRIOT. I encourage you to make the show and make the switch today. When we come back after this break, Alana Goodman from the Washington Free Beacon is here, blockbuster reporting on the Michigan Senate primary. You got to hear this audio when we come back on the Scott Jennings Show.
The one thing you can count on here on this show. We tell the truth. You can count on it. It's the Scott Jennings Show.
Home stretch here on Monday, March 30th. I was hoping, actually, to get Andy Serkis, Hollywood actor and producer, on the line. He's actually overseas, and we had some technical difficulties getting him on. He's got a new movie coming out May 1st called Animal Farm. It is based on the George Orwell book, Animal Farm. This one's animated. It is a star-studded cast, and I think there's a lot of lessons in Animal Farm that we can learn in this moment. And Andy Serkis is going to get rescheduled. So I wanted to talk to Andy today and let him talk to you about this new movie. So we'll get him back on the books. But I'm going to go see this. And I'm going to take the kids, too, because message in there that I think we all need to know. We do have one final story to bring to you today. Crazy audio emerging from one of the Democrats running for the Senate in Michigan, Abdul El-Sayed. He's one of the leading Democratic candidates up there. And when the Ayatollah died in U.S. airstrikes, here's what he told his campaign staff. You won't believe it. Cut number 5.
So, this is going to destabilize the region. I also want to remind you guys that there are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad today.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just don't want to comment on Khamenei at all. I don't think it's worth even touching that.
One of the worst butchers in the world dies. And Abdul El-Sayed says, well, there's a lot of people that are going to be sad about this. The reason we have this blockbuster audio is because of my next guest. She writes for the Washington Free Beacon. Her name is Alana Goodman. Alana, I feel like we have you on here all the time because you're constantly breaking news. Tell us about this crazy call that Abdul El-Sayed had with his staff. Is this what it's like to run in a Democratic primary in Michigan right now, running in fear of these Ayatollah sympathizers in Dearborn, Michigan?
Thanks so much, Scott. Yeah, I think this is fascinating because, a lot of times we'll see politicians dodge questions or kind of ignore stories that are going on in the news or refuse to comment, and you won't know why. Now we have audio of a private meeting. This is a meeting between him and his communications staff, and he's talking about, I am not specifically commenting on this. So we know this was a calculated political move, and he doesn't want to talk about it because he's concerned it's going to upset voters, very extreme voters who he says are supporters of Khamenei or who are mourning Khamenei's death. And so that is just an extremely interesting political calculus that we can see and something that we typically would not know about because this is happening, behind closed doors with just a few communication staffers.
Yeah, what is so concerning about this is that there is a clear political strategy in a Democratic primary in a purple state like Michigan that this campaign believes it needs to gather up all the voters who would be sympathetic to the Ayatollah Khamenei, people who have attacked the United States for 47 years, people who've murdered by the thousands their own citizens. That is the voting bloc. People who are saddened by his death, that is a voting bloc, and a critical one apparently, for a Democrat candidate for the United States Senate. Let me just ask you, if he were to get the nomination up there, what would that say about Democratic politics in Michigan? Would that say that basically Dearborn and those sympathetic to the Ayatollah own the Democratic Party there?
I think it would say it would be a disturbing trend, as we have seen in other places with Democratic politics, and moving further and further to the left. This is a very competitive primary going on right now in Michigan, and I think that this also plays into concerns about El-Sayed's extremism. He has a campaign event that's coming up with Hassan Piker, who's a kind of social media celebrity who said that the U.S. deserved 9/11. El-Sayed also said he felt it was politically risky when he came out and condemned the attack on the synagogue in Michigan. He said that he felt that was a political risk for his campaign to do. And he said that when he was a college athlete, he refused to face the American flag during the national anthem because he was opposed to the Iraq War. So this is kind of a history with him, and I think it definitely plays into those concerns. Also, in a competitive race like what he's in, it comes off as very politically calculated. He says specifically that he's going to kind of dodge these questions and then pivot to attacking Trump on his connections to Epstein, and also Democrats
Unbelievable.
Who take, funding from AIPAC. So a lot of political calculations going on here.
That's Alana Goodman. She writes for the Washington Free Beacon. Read everything she writes because she's on top of it and brings us news you won't get in the mainstream media. We're done for the day. Back tomorrow. It's Scott on Salem. Thanks.